Good evening, ladies, and welcome to this Read Woke Baby and Children webinar. I'm Victoria. I'm the Teen Services Librarian at the Iowa City Public Library, and Casey is also here. Casey, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
I'm Casey. I'm a Children's Services Librarian at the Iowa City Public Library.
Beautiful. And Jen is also here.
I'm Jen, and I am a programming librarian for the Cedar Rapids Public Library.
Wonderful. So the purpose of this webinar is to discuss briefly what Read Woke is, to talk about why reading woke is so important for babies and children, to give you an overview of some of our favorite books and why we love them, and then just give you some book discussion questions for the book Hair Love. So that's what we're going to be going through during this webinar. I will start by showing you a brief presentation. All right, so Read Woke is actually a nationwide and I think even international reading initiative. It was started by Cicely Lewis, who is a teacher librarian, and she wanted to bring more diverse titles into her school. So today we're going to be talking about babies and children and why reading woke is so important to them. So the Read Woke program aims to challenge a social norm, to give voice to the voiceless, to provide information about a group that has been disenfranchised, to seek to challenge the status quo, and to have a protagonist from an underrepresented or oppressed group. So why is it so important to read woke to children? According to this Scientific American magazine, babies as young as 5 months, and I've read in other articles, even 3 months, can distinguish between faces of all races equally. As they start to develop, their brains also develop and start to recognize in a way that adults would recognize. And so they start to discern between different races and could see one potentially as better than another. So this is why we read woke. Studies show that babies under 1 year old recognize differences in skin color. So it's important that babies see people of color, people with different abilities and underrepresented voices in their books, even though they're board books. And now, if you go to Cedar Rapids Public Library, Iowa City Public Library, or any library that is closest to you, you'll notice that the array of books has just become more and more diverse. So before I go into a few of my favorites, I'm gonna go over to Jen and Casey and ask if they have some favorite baby board book picks.
I can start. Sure, this is Casey. I really enjoy, you had a photo of it up on the previous slide. A is for Activist, I absolutely love. And anything by the author Julie Flett, I really, really appreciate. She's done a lot of board books and is a native illustrator, and she's fabulous.
Awesome. What about you, Jen?
Sorry.
No worries.
I think I was muted. My kids are being crazy. I really like Feminist Baby by Lauren Brands. I just think it's a good thing to start little kids kind of listening to, hearing about, even though the concept of feminism is kind of highfalutin. I really think that book makes it really accessible even to like a baby, or gets them seeing different images and getting introduced to that idea earlier on in life. And it's great for toddlers too, not just baby. So
A is for Activist and Feminist Baby. So a couple of the ones that I highlighted over here, I don't know if you can see, this little Trailblazer just has, just like the title says, it's a beautiful primer on female women activists. It's a board book, so babies can dribble, but they can also learn while they dribble. And it's actually a great way for adults if they're not familiar with a certain person. which, you know, might seem embarrassing, but, you know, as I was leafing through, I saw Maria Tallchief, and I didn't know who she was before. And so now, because I know who she is, I can go to the young adult and I can go to the adult section and check her out. So there's no need to be embarrassed, because you can read to your baby and you can figure out, you know, some people that you might not have known. Vashti Harrison is just, I just love her illustrations. They're so beautiful. She also does Solway, which is one of her more recent ones. This one, Think Big Little One, is just like a wonderful book to, you know, show your little baby that they can really do whatever they want. Again, this is something, it's women pioneers, so like Wangari Maathai, who planted a bunch of trees in Africa and was an environmentalist. Lots of people that maybe you've heard of, but again, I hadn't heard of some of them. Wang Zhenyi, I didn't know about her before, so again, I can look at it and then go back and find out. Woke Baby is, I have a picture of it there. It's just a really cute baby of, you know, one of the tenets of the Read Woke initiative is just to kind of give voice to underrepresented voices. You know, this little African American baby just doing things that every baby does is just a great way to show all babies that they all pretty much do the same thing. So those are some of my favorite ones. So picture books, there are some gorgeous picture books on the stacks, and I used to just rifle through them all. I haven't had as much of a chance to do it lately, but particularly for toddlers and school-age children, it's a really pivotal time to teach them how to read woke. Toddlers begin to be more vocal about talking about skin color. When my daughter was about 3, she was definitely noticing the differences between Tiana and some of the other Disney princesses Barbie dolls that she had at the time. So it's a really good way to kind of highlight how somebody is different, but different is not necessarily bad. Differences, you might both love soccer, but you have this color skin, or you have this kind of hair. So that's kind of a way to bring diversity to life. At ages 4 to 6, it's more common for children to apply positive traits to people of their own ethnic group and apply negative ones to those not in their ethnic group. And more so, white kind of becomes the default. So even minorities and children of color will see that white children are better than them, which is, of course, not what we want to reinforce. And so we really have to get in at this age and discuss why it's so important. So some of my favorite picture books I'll talk about in a smidge, but we'll go over to Casey and then Jen again and see if they have some good ones at the top of their head.
Oh, woke picture books, there are so many. I feel like I've been living in this little Read Woke land for a while, and it's just been so much fun to be making all of these lists and seeing all sorts of picture books that are just absolutely lovely. Newer ones that I really appreciate, I love Julie Fogliano and Jillian Tamaki's My Best Friend. It's just about a lovely little friendship between 2 young girls, and they don't know each other's names, and it's just very sweet, very innocent child love. I love it. Another one that's on the new shelf that I really like is by Min Lee and Dan Santat, and it's called Lift, and it's basically an early comic book, but it's in the picture book format, and so it's really, really fun to read with younger readers and emergent readers too.
Awesome. And how about you, Jen?
So I really like, and I was quickly Googling the author, but one of my favorite picture books that I actually just recently bought for my son is Crown. And my son loves getting his hair. Okay, so with COVID and everything, he hasn't been able to go to his hairdresser. Yes, he has a hairdresser. And he loves going to see Nick. And so we bought Crown, and I just pulled it up. Derek Barnes is the author. And I just felt like it was one of those books that he could really relate to, because a lot of the feelings he feels about his hair and his appearance and everything are showcased in that book. about getting your hair done at the barbershop. So that's one of our favorites. The other one that we bought recently as well, and read in our home. I'm gonna just quickly pull up the author here. Sorry. And Lubna and Pebble by Wendy Medor it's an older book, but it's one that I really love because the story is about this little girl who is a immigrant, and all she can take with her is this pebble. And so she draws a smile on this pebble to make herself feel better. But when she gets to her destination, her place of safety, or her country that she's going to start living in, she's made a friend in the refugee camp, and she gives Pebble away. And it's just such a sweet story. And it also, I think, kids understand that, like, I don't know, I think of like Knuffle Bunny Free, which is the last one in the Knuffle Bunny series, and I think all kids kind of have that connection with like growing out of something because you don't need it anymore, and so I liked that concept is kind of revisited, but in a situation that my kids don't have a lot of context for.
It's funny that you say Knuffle. I've always said Canuffle, and it never rolled off the tongue, but maybe I should just say Knuffle now. Do you say Canuffle, Casey?
I say Canuffle when I read it in story time, but that's because that's the way Mo Willems says it when he narrates the books. If I'm reading it at home and it's just me reading it at home for us, I say Knuffle because that's the way I say it naturally.
Okay.
It's weird, the performative aspect of storytelling.
Right. Our puddle jumper is back.
Our puddle jumper is back. This is my daughter. Say hi.
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 Are you gonna go jump in some more puddles?
No. I'm home.
You're home. Okay.
Oh, I'm home. Okay, well, kind of piggybacking off of Jen's Lubna and the Pebble, a couple of my favorite immigrant or migrant stories is Stepping Stones, and the artist makes all of the characters from different stones and pebbles, and I just think it's a beautiful way to showcase the story of migration and how to identify with those people who, you know, will live in very similar lives to what we would be living, and then war comes or famine comes or whatever it is, and they have to move. I think I just can't believe he's just kind of captured it in rock form. It's just so beautiful. Another one of my favorites is The Journey by Francesca Sana, and her artwork is just stunning. I just think the way that the illustrations like engulf the family, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. Yusra Swims, I love this story because it's very short, but it's very telling. Like, she tells pretty much the story just in a tiny little poem, and I just really like that one. And then Migrant was my pick because I love it. The butterfly and the whole imagery of like the monarch butterfly. I think you Morales and Dreamers, and just, you know, this huge migration, and I love that story too. And just this transient feeling when you're a migrant or an immigrant of, you know, having to shape forms and having to be different people and fit into different places is just captured really well in that story, and I just love that one. Okay, so continuing with the theme, hair love is obviously what we're going to talk about today. We'll kind of put up some discussion questions at the end of that. One of a Kind, I just like it, stood out. It was kind of like Casey said earlier on, it's a little bit graphic novel-y, but for children, so in picture book form. I like it. It's pink, yellow, and black is predominantly. The little boy in the story is, you know, his own self, but, you know, when you look different, you're gonna hear about it, you know. So it's just about kind of like finding your own voice when you're little, finding your band, finding your jam, you know, kind of beating to your own guitar or whatever it is. And that's what I liked about that story. Vashti Harrison is the illustrator, as I talked about, with Lupita Nyong'o, who wrote the story. Just about a little girl who was so dark. She tried all kinds of things to kind of pale her skin. She ate bananas, you know, anything to like make herself whiter. And it's just a beautiful coming of age for a little child about, you know, how to embrace and be beautiful in the skin that you're in. And then Matt de la Pena, the first two pictures here are Carmela Full of Wishes. And then the second one is Last Stop on Market Street. So I just think he tells really good stories. He has a wide array of characters. So, you know, even if you're not from a big city, you're able to see lots of different people and ride on the bus and you know, see what it's like to talk to a guy with tattoos, or, you know, why grandma takes the bus when they could drive in a car. It's just a lot of things that aren't explicitly said, but there's a lot of, you know, there's behind the scene things going on in that story. So I just love that one. I don't know if I talked about it, but just quickly, I also love this story. It's called The Water Protectors, and it's the pictures are gorgeous. It's really an early story about, you know, protecting your planet, how vital water is to all of us. But oftentimes, you know, Indigenous stories are able to like capture just the essence of why it's so important. And I think The Water Protectors by Carol Lindstrom was just a really good way of doing that. So moving on to chapter books. Children at this age tend to be more receptive. You know, maybe kids have heard something on the news, or they've heard snippets of things, and they're able to kind of come up with some of their own ideas. But it is important also at this time to dispel cultural myths and stereotypes, and kind of say, for example, you know, not all people like vanilla ice cream. Some people like chocolate. It's still ice cream. It's still delicious. Just kind of discerning between, you know, even though people may look different, they have probably more things in common than not. Okay, chapter book picks. I'll go again to Casey and then Jen.
I'm going to give you three. Anything that Louise Erdrich has written, but particularly the Birchbark House series, is just fabulous. My daughter, who you just saw, and I actually just finished reading Grace Lynn's Newbery winner, Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, at bedtime, and she loved it, and I loved it. It's not the first time I've read it, but it's fabulous, and the art in that is really great too. And then we also recently listened to, as a family, a book by Zeta Elliott called Dragons in a Bag, which is an urban fantasy, and it's just lovely. I can't wait to read the sequel.
My chapter books picks would be Erin Entrada Kelly's Hello Universe, just because the characters are super quirky, so quirky. And what I love about it is that it's about this little boy who wants to be friends with a girl that is deaf, but he's super shy. And it's about overcoming his shyness. It's learning how to communicate with someone with different abilities, who in many ways is not shy. Like, what I love about the deaf character is that she is a firecracker and she doesn't need people's help. And that kind of actually intimidates our main character, who's very shy. And so he basically goes to a peer who is a psychic to get the help of the universe to kind of help bring their friendship about. And it's just this wonderful little magic story that feels kind of epic, but at the same time, it's very real and relatable. Weird stuff happens, but at the same time, it's still like not super weird at the same time. So I love that one. And another one would be Tristan Strong. So last year I worked with a group of like 6th graders, sixth graders at Taft Middle School. And I really looked into titles where those kiddos could connect with the main characters a little bit better. And I really enjoyed the book Tristan Strong, or the series Tristan Strong. It's this fantasy hero story about the main character, Tristan Strong, and the adventures he kind of finds himself in. And I just really loved that kind of fantasy. It felt a little bit like Black Panther. So I felt like it was a great read for kiddos maybe who really struggle to get into reading because it can be kind of boring. Like, I love Hello Universe, but that's a very different book than Tristan Strong. And I love both of them because they have different strengths, but Tristan Strong just really kind of captured my heart because I could see so many of my sixth grade kiddos in him. So
I'd have to agree with that one. I had not really read any of those, and had just actually, Kevin from Cedar Rapids Public Library had told me about Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky. And it's just so magical, and just to be able to identify with characters that are just not, your typical protagonist. It's a super adventure story, and I bet kids are just going to love that one. Bud Not Buddy, The Mighty Mr. Malone, and I believe the Watsons go to Washington. The Watsons go to Alabama. The
Watsons go to Birmingham.
Watsons go to Birmingham.
They definitely go somewhere. So that was the first one that I read, and I just love it. I love the way that he makes characters that you identify with right away, but also it's within the pivotal points of the civil rights movement, and so they're also dealing with this huge tragedy. So it's a way for kids to empathize with characters, but also learn about history. And I think he does it in a great way. And it's the same. So I kind of collectively put those together. Jacqueline Woodson too. I just think she's a beautiful storyteller. I just love her so much, and everything that she writes, I will read. And so How About Me, I think, is a great book for, middle grade, probably I would say like fifth grade, maybe sixth and up. These kids just have all of these different backgrounds, get put in a virtual chat, and there's no grown up, and so they're able just to kind of let their guard down and talk about the situations of family members incarcerated. One of them is facing deportation, and they're just able to kind of discuss. And if grown-ups did that more often, I think we'd get a lot further instead of being inside our little bubbles. Angela Dominguez is not really somebody that I'd read before, so I can't really give much of a context or a background. This one, Stella Diaz Never Gives Up, was more of just kind of like a fun read. The protagonist just loves the ocean. She gets to go on a trip to Mexico and save the ocean, and it's just, I don't know, it's just a story that I hadn't really read before, and so in that sense I liked it. By Any Means Necessary, I would think would be older, so not kind of within the confines of these chapter books. I would say like age 14 and up, so once you're graduating. So we'll probably talk more about that one in our next meeting when we meet for the YA. But yeah, I'm not really gonna go into any more of those. So if you have the book at home, or if you want to discuss some things, we just put up some potential questions. When you're reading through the book, pay attention, that your child is taking in a lot of the images before they're taking in the text, and so they see a lot of things maybe that you might not be thinking about. So Casey's just going to highlight a few of her favorite parts of the book, and then we'll leave the questions up for a little bit, and if any of you two have anything to say about the book and why you like it or why you don't like it, we can talk about that too.
So I'm going to be reading it on my iPad, and the photos are really bad, so I'm just going to read it to myself. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll just read some sections. My name is Zuri, and I have hair that has a mind of its own. It kinks, coils, and curls every which way. Daddy tells me it's beautiful. That makes me proud. I love that my hair lets me be me. Today, I woke up extra early all by myself. I was too excited to sleep. It's a big day. Daddy was still sleeping. Lately, Daddy has been worn out. He makes me breakfast, takes me to school, goes to work, picks me up, and yesterday we went for a bike ride around the park. I think he needs a break. And then after this point, she continues to try to do her hair herself until her father comes and helps her create a hairstyle that she loves and is excited to wear for a very special occasion in the afternoon. And it's just a lovely, lovely story.
Awesome. Jen, you mentioned that you had seen a Netflix show, Bookends or something on this?
So they just talk, so there's this great Netflix series out right now called Bookmarks. And it basically goes through, I thought that Hair Love was one of them, but I think they just kind of highlight it in a, these are great other reads to read, but it's a series that basically reads you the book. A prominent African-American person, a lot of them are actors. I think most of them are actors now that I think about it, read a contemporary book that we would consider as woke, and talk about the book afterward, and kind of, I don't know, like build your love for it and bring out those little details that maybe you wouldn't necessarily notice had not someone talked about them. So I would recommend, while Hair Love is one of the books that is discussed kind of on the side, it's not one that's showcased. I really do recommend that families watch those, because you are not only exposed to the books, but also just people talking about their personal experiences in reading something that reflects who they are, and what that story means to them. And the books that they choose are wonderful because I think no matter what kind of background you have, you can find a little way in, because maybe you share some little point of recognition in that character or in those experiences, even if you haven't experienced them specifically.
Mm-hmm. And did you like the book Hair Love, Jen?
I did. I particularly love how Dad really tries hard to do hair. And I think that, I mean, my husband struggles with doing my daughter's hair. My daughter has thick, fine hair that tangles pretty immediately. And she struggles with loving her hair. So having when I'm at work and Dad has to take over for mom duties, I was like, yep, I felt like the guy in the book, though, did a way better job.
Yeah. I do too. I remember my very first library program was a daddy-daughter hair salon, and just watching those guys, just watching them try to brush their kid's hair or, put it in a ponytail. It was like they were doing brain surgery or something. If you don't have that muscle memory, it's just hard.
Yeah, so much deep concentration. Also, like you can watch this, so Sony did it's like the book, but it's not like the book, a rendition. I'll call it a rendition of Hair Love, which I also read, or which I also watched. And I liked that take too. It kind of deepened some of the stuff that goes on in the book. So kind of, I wouldn't say enriching it, but giving maybe a slightly different perspective on this particular story. And again, I really enjoyed, they actually make the dad out physically like fighting the daughter's hair. the daughter's hair is this monster, and he's in a boxing ring, and the hair is winning.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love that. But you know, that's not really part of the book as much. So I don't know. I liked both of those takes on this. So
yeah. All right. Well, you know, as you're going through the book, if you're reading it with young children, you know, you can ask, you know, what are the characters doing here? What do you see in the picture? You know, they can tell a story just by looking at the pictures, even if they're just tiny and little. If you two don't have anything else about Hair Love, at the very end of this, we have just a book list of books that, you know, are included in the presentation. If anybody wants more extensive, we'd be happy to provide lists. But otherwise, we'll plan on we have 2 more book discussions coming up, one in October and one in November, both second Wednesdays at 6 o'clock via Zoom. One is going to be a young adult discussing Dear Justice, and that one will be in October. And then the final one will be Ibram X. Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist. So again, both will be on Zoom. Both will have Jen and maybe Casey, if Casey would like to come again. You know, I just find just even having like a little chat and talking about titles is really nice. I mean, even with not people here, you know, it's just if I come away and I have like 3 more titles that I'm gonna go and read, it's just all the better, you know.
It's so funny. I'm thinking about Hair Love, and I'm thinking about all of the picture books that I know that are specifically about natural hair. And as a woman with very, very kinky curly hair, that changed as I got older and got more so. And I definitely had those monster moments as a child where like my mom was fighting me and I was fighting me. I feel like these kinds of books are really stories that I would have absolutely appreciated as a kid. And I'm so grateful to be able to share right now.
Yeah.
It's just lovely. If you're into Hair Love, there are so many other great natural hair books in the picture book world. So many. Hair, It's a Family Affair. Oh my goodness. Bedtime Bonnet is new. It's really lovely. Yeah, there are lots.
Okay, great.
I actually read your list on the ICPL website, Casey, and I checked out the bonnet one. Like that was
it's
one.
So cute.
It is super
so
cute. It's super cute. And that like raised a bunch of questions for my daughter. She's like, "Oh, she sleeps in a cap," and I was like, "She does." Casey, you're like, I do too.
I do too. Yeah. If my daughter's hair turns curly, it's going to be a really great transitional book to be like, this is something that we just do now. You know how mommy sleeps in a bedtime bonnet? Now you get one too.
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
It's fun. Like the natural hair world is just rife with all sorts of information.
Awesome. All right, well, ladies, I think we covered it all.